Let me remind you of the verse that we're focusing on, because now the hadiths will confirm my understanding, exegesis of the text. Remember what chapter 46, verses 31 to 32 stated. Here again is Shakir. O our people, accept the divine caller and believe in him, the caller. He will forgive you of your faults and protect you from a painful punishment. Whoever does not accept the divine caller, he shall not escape in the earth, and he shall not have guardians besides him. So the divine caller, you have to believe in him. You have no protector besides him. He has the ability to forgive you and protect you, guard you against a painful doom. Now, does the hadith confirm that Muhammad has been given the ability to protect you, to guard you against a painful doom? Yes. This comes from Sahih Bukhari. It's a very long hadith, so I'm not going to read all of it. Sahih Bukhari, volume 9. Now the online version of Muskhin Khan, Muhammad Muskhin Khan's translation of Sahih Bukhari is found online. The numbering of the online version is number 532V, the letter V. Number 532V, Sahih Bukhari, volume 9, book 93, number 532V. Notice what it says Muhammad will do on the last day. Watch here. He's going to go before Allah and tell Allah, Nafsi, Nafsi. I'm sorry, not Nafsi, Nafsi. That's what the other messengers say. Excuse me. Ummati, Ummati. My people, my people. So then Allah will grant him the power to intercede. Let me pick it up from that point. So they will come to me, and I will ask my Lord's permission to enter his house. And then I will be permitted. When I see him, I will fall down in prostration before him, and he will leave me in prostration as long as he will. Then he will say, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, lift up your head and speak, for you'll be listened to, and intercede, for your intercession will be accepted. And ask for anything, for it will be granted. Then I will raise my head, glorify my Lord with certain praises which he has taught me. Now watch. Allah will put a limit for me to intercede for a certain type of people. I will take them out. Notice, Allah doesn't take them out of hell. Muhammad says, I will take them out and make them enter paradise. Qatada said, I heard Anas saying, the Prophet said, I will go out and take them out of hellfire and let them enter paradise. Did you guys catch it? According to the sound narration attributed to Muhammad, who takes people out of hell? By the way, Jonathan says that your mic is muted. Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, sorry. Your video actually just gone off. Do you want to start?
That's all right. That's just, I've been losing internet connection. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so who takes people out of hell on the last day? Who saves them from Allah's wrath and judgment? According to this hadith, Muhammad, which confirms that that passage we just read, it is referring to Muhammad as the one you need to believe in, as the one who can forgive you, as the one who's your protector, as the one who will guard you from a painful doom. Can the Quran and the hadith be any clearer, any more obvious that Muhammad elevated himself to a status of deity, making himself a partner with his God in his God's ability to forgive and save? Brian, that's interesting that you brought that up. There's an entire discussion by Muslims on the basis of some narrations which say that Muhammad in his tomb is aware of all the prayers around the world that are being offered to him. Lord willing, I'll get to that, Brian, in a minute. But stay with me so far. If it's clear and no one's confused, I want to move to the next step. Everyone on the same page with me? Mm-hmm. Everyone?
Uh-huh.
Now, just to put the icing on the cake, that you definitely need Muhammad to be forgiven, to be saved, to be protected from the wrath of Allah. Let me read some passages which state quite plainly, Muhammad's prayers for you, his intercession, are necessary in order for you to be forgiven. Let me read this for you. So if any Muslim wants to say, no, you're misreading the hadith and you misread that passage, well, okay, then that means I'm misreading a lot of passages, because throughout the Quran, you find this point being hammered over and over again. Watch. Chapter 3, verse 159. I'll read these. It was by the mercy of Allah, chapter 3, verse 159, it was by the mercy of Allah that thou wast lenient with them, O Muhammad, for if thou had been stern and fierce of heart, they would have dispersed from round about thee. They would have ran from you if you were harsh. Watch this, guys. So pardon them and ask forgiveness for them. Muhammad is to do what? Muhammad, you forgive them and ask me to forgive them, and consult with them upon the conduct of affairs. And when thou art resolved, you are resolved, put thy trust in Allah. Lo, Allah loveth those who put their trust in Him. So Muhammad is to pardon believers and ask Allah to forgive them. Yet I thought there's no middleman in Islam, no intercessor. Chapter 4, verse 64. Chapter 4, verse 64. We sent not an apostle but to be obeyed in accordance with the will of God. If they had only, when they were unjust to themselves, come unto thee. If they only had come to you, Muhammad, and asked God's forgiveness, and the apostle had asked forgiveness for them, they would have found God indeed oft returning, most merciful. Did you guys catch it? It's not enough that you ask Allah to forgive you. Muhammad himself has to ask for your forgiveness. Then you will find Allah all too willing to show you mercy and turning back to you. Now, here is a question for the Muslims. The Quran is supposed to be a timeless message, meaning its passages are meant for every generation of Muslims till the end. Therefore, chapter 3, verse 159 and chapter 4, verse 64 of the Quran are passages that are still binding upon Muslims till this day. Now, can I ask you guys a question? How in the world can Muslims meet the requirements of these passages that say they need Muhammad to ask for their forgiveness when Muhammad is dead? How? Think about that. How? If you tell me, well, it was only true for that time when Muhammad is alive, then what are you telling me about the message of the Quran? It's not for all generations of believers. It's time bound. It's limited to that generation, because these passages are now obsolete because of Muhammad's death.
He would have to be omniscient.
You see the problem? If you say these passages were only applicable at Muhammad's time, then you're telling me that there are parts of the Quran made obsolete by the death of Muhammad, which means the Quran was contingent upon him being alive. So that Allah's revelation to mankind is dependent on a creature whose death has now made much of it obsolete, null, and void. Help me out, Muslims. Help me. Guess what? Guess what? You want to hear what's funny? And again, I don't mean to laugh, but it is somewhat amusing as well as sad that Muslims do not see what this religion has done to them. This religion has turned them into basically idolaters who worship a man even though they deny that they do so. Guess what Ibn Kathir says about chapter 4, verse 64. Ibn Kathir, you can read his commentary. Now, again, for those of you listening, Nehemiah and everyone else, you will not find this in the English abridged version of Ibn Kathir, because the Muslims who translated Ibn Kathir into English were Salafis. So the Salafi Muslims got rid of a lot of statements from Ibn Kathir that contradicted their theology. Unfortunately for us, one of the narrations that Ibn Kathir mentions was omitted by the Salafi publication that produced the English translation of Ibn Kathir, so you won't find it. But if you guys read Arabic, and if you don't read Arabic, ask me because I have it translated. I'll send it to you. In Ibn Kathir's translation, exegesis of 464, he says, there was a man who went to the gravesite of Muhammad. Guys, pay attention. A man went to the gravesite of Muhammad and asked Muhammad to pray for his forgiveness because of this verse. Because of this verse, he went to the grave of Muhammad and he asked Muhammad to pray to Allah to forgive him. There was a Muslim who was sleeping near the grave. According to that Muslim, Muhammad came to him in a dream and he says, "O Utbi, go tell that man his request has been answered. Allah has forgiven him." Did you catch it? This is the narration of Utbi. You guys, I don't know if you caught it. You understand what the implication of that? A man went to the grave of Muhammad because he realized that this passage, 464, makes it mandatory and essential to get Muhammad's intercession to procure your forgiveness. And so, he knew that Muhammad is dead, but his body's in the grave. So he went to the grave of Muhammad and started speaking to a man in his grave. He started talking to Muhammad in his grave. "Ya Rasulullah, ask Allah to have mercy on me, forgive me." The other Muslim who was there, who was asleep, says that Muhammad came to him in the dream and he says, "Oh Utbi, go tell that man his request has been granted. He's forgiven." This means that the only option you have, if you believe these passages are still binding, is to believe that you can still contact Muhammad even though he's in his grave, because you still need him to intercede for you. If you take the opposite view, that no, now that Muhammad is dead, right, these passages are no longer necessary, you just made the Quran obsolete. And you made the Quran null and void. Then how many more verses have become obsolete because of the death of your messenger? I hope you guys see the dilemma. And Brian, stick around. I'm going to show you that the hadith say Muhammad does hear your prayers and actually greets you every time you greet him.
Michael is saying no, Sam. Shall we promote him to panelist to see what he has to say?
Michael is telling me the Quran is obsolete. So I want to thank Michael for helping me prove that the Quran is not a message for all peoples in all generations. Because he wouldn't dare go to Muhammad's grave and ask him to pray for him, even though the Quran says Muhammad's prayer for Michael is necessary to procure his forgiveness. He's saying that part of the Quran is null and void. Thank you, Michael, for helping me prove that the Quran, at least many verses, not all of it, right? We'll say many verses. Okay, let me be generous. Some verses. I won't even say many. You know, for the sake of being charitable, that there are some verses in this Quran that are obsolete because those verses needed your prophet to be alive. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. So anyway, are we ready to move on to other verses?
Sure.
Someone's comment, Jar Bodine. Indeed, he isn't nor anything like it, but Sam's right.
Yeah, let us know, Sam, if you need to take a break to give your voice a rest.
Yes, let me finish this part, and then we'll take a short break so people can get some drink or their food or snacks. Guys, believe me when I tell you, I'm still scratching the surface. This still isn't bad. Now, some of you may be shocked. What do you mean? It gets worse? Much worse. I will show you narrations where people are actually praying to Muhammad directly. Praying to Muhammad directly. You think this is bad? The worst is still to come. So stick around, and I do apologize for my voice, and I do apologize for torturing you by taking so long to try and unpack this, but what can I do? There's reams and reams of material, so I'm trying to do my best to at least touch upon that which I think is most pertinent to confirming the fact that Muhammad turned himself into a god alongside his deity.
Michael says it's very disappointing you're misrepresenting the Quran. Should we pull him up to see if he can defend that?
Now, Jonathan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Who do you think Michael's convincing? Us or himself?
Himself.
Oh. Anyone here listening, are you convinced by Michael's objections and basically his ad hominems, right? So Michael, you're trying hard to convince us, but you're failing to refute my arguments by showing us anywhere from the Quran where I'm misquoting the Quran or from the Hadiths. All you did was say misquoting, and therefore I'm going to get Yusuf, Ismail, and Shibrali to do my battles and put you in your place. That's not refutation, friend. That's running away from the argumentation, right? Anyway, let me read these two last references so we can take a short break. Chapter 9, verse 103. Take sadaqah, take alms from their wealth in order to purify them and sanctify them with it. Guys, pay attention again to the dilemma this passage poses to Muslims now that Muhammad is dead. Take sadaqah, meaning alms, from their wealth in order to purify them and sanctify them with it, and invoke Allah for them. Verily, your invocations are a source of security for them. Same question, guys. Here the Quran explicitly says Muhammad's prayers for his ummah are a source of security for them. Here again is the same question. How can Muslims continue to benefit from Muhammad's prayers, which are a source of security for them, if Muhammad is dead and can no longer pray for them? And if he can't pray for them, why would Allah rob his community of believers from this blessing of having Muhammad pray and secure their peace? How are you going to answer that? You understand the dilemma? Not only that, it says, take alms from them. Because when you take alms from them, Muhammad, you purify them. Again, how can Muhammad continue to bless his ummah by taking alms from them in order to purify them if he's dead? If he's dead, does this mean that this passage is obsolete? If it's obsolete, why would Allah rob you Muslims of this blessing and privilege? Because it says, when Muhammad takes alms from you, Allah purifies you, right? Actually, it says he purifies them. Muhammad does. And when Muhammad prays for you, it's a source of security. Why would Allah rob you of the blessing of Muhammad's prayers, which is a source of security for you, and rob you of the ability to give alms to Muhammad so you could be purified by causing Muhammad to die, thereby making this verse obsolete? You see the dilemma?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone with me before I read the final passage?
Yep.
What's the only other option, saints? If this passage hasn't been made obsolete by the death of Muhammad, what's the other option? That you can still communicate with Muhammad in his grave, and he can still benefit you by still praying for you. Right? Is that clear to everyone?
It's clear.
All right. At least you're responding. I think everyone else took a break. They're like, this guy's too much to handle. Finally, 47:19. So know, O Muhammad, there is no God save Allah. Ask forgiveness for thy sin and for believing men and believing women. Allah knoweth both your place of turmoil and your place of rest. So again, do you see that? Muhammad is to pray for their forgiveness. So Muslims need Muhammad's prayers to be forgiven. Muhammad's prayers as a source of security. But since Muhammad is dead, how can Muhammad continue to benefit them? Two options again. Either these passages are obsolete, null and void, or his death is not a barrier that prevents you from continuing to ask him in the grave, Ya Rasulullah, pray for me. You don't have a third option, do you? Only two options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only two options. Now notice what Michal said. It's on the day of judgment. I'll give you $1 million and Jonathan will take shahada if you show me where it says on the day of judgment. Let me read it again because I guess it wasn't clear. So know, Muhammad, there is no God save Allah, and ask forgiveness. Does it say ask forgiveness on the day of judgment? Ask right now. Or what about chapter 9, verse 103? Take sadaqah from their wealth. You're telling me that on the day of judgment, Muhammad will take charity from you? So on the day of judgment, Muhammad's going to say, hey, where's your charity? Because remember, chapter 9, verse 103 refers to the day of judgment. So bring up your charity so I can pray for you now on the day of judgment. Are you serious? And that's a refutation? You seriously think that's a refutation? Seriously? But anyway, can we take a short 5-minute break?
Sure, go ahead.
Guys, again, bear with me with my voice. There's something about Jonathan's webinar that brings on a spiritual attack on my voice. But glory to Jesus, it's still strong enough for me to continue. And do bear with me because I know it's taking longer than normal. But again, that's the nature of the topic. So I pray that still the Lord Jesus will use it and bless it to convict Muslims so they can see the lies and deceptions and turn to Him and bless you and strengthen you and embolden you in your witness to Muslims for the glory of Jesus and the might and majesty of His Spirit in Jesus' name. 5-minute break.